Welcome tonight. Let us drift together into a world both familiar and distant. A world of narrow alleys so darkened skies and silent drawing rooms lit by the flicker of gaslight. Close your eyes, if you wish, and allow your mind to soften its grip on the present. We are about to step back into Victorian London, a place of contrasts and contradictions, of opulence and hardship, of quiet resilience beneath the relentless march of industry. We will wander through hidden sewers beneath the bustling streets. And finally, we will stand quietly at the edges of grand dining rooms where secrets whisper between clinks of crystal glass. Imagine yourself walking slowly through the waking city, its cobblestones slick with last night's rain, the morning mist curling lazily between rows of tall time-worn buildings. In this journey, we will glimpse the weary rhythm of life in the slums. We will pause to watch a queen grieve and govern, and allow history to unfold gently around you, as we begin with the hardest place of all to truly imagine. And in places, a thin trickle of something darker, slipping quietly into the gutter. The dawnlight filters through a gray haze of coal smoke, barely bright enough to catch the slick sheen of rain on worn cobblestones. You dress quickly, for warmth more than modesty. In garments patched and repatched, the fabric rough and worn thin in places. Settle in, breathe slowly. The narrow alley is a canyon of brick, its windows shuttered or broken, its doors opening onto lives as hard as your own. Why you wouldn't last a day in a Victorian slum. Why you wouldn't last a day in a Victorian slum. The walls around you are damp to the touch, streaked with mold rising from the ground. Perhaps you carry coal from barge to cellar, your fingers blackened and your lungs filled with fine dust. Or perhaps you stand bent over a mangle in a steamy laundry, your arms aching with each heavy turn. Picture, if you will, a narrow street hemmed in by tall tenements of weary brick. On better days, a scrap of meat, boiled until tender. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by the cold, by the damp, by worry, and always the weary knowledge that tomorrow will be much the same. The taste is often of salt, smoke, and the faint bitterness of overused fat. The single fireplace struggles to banish the evening chill, its thin smoke curling into the room and settling on every surface. Even in hardship, there is rhythm, a stubborn pulse of life. Imagine the tight press of bricks against your chest, the rasp of soot against your skin, the flickering fear of slipping or becoming stuck. You walk carefully here, for the street is cluttered with refuse, scraps of food, discarded cloth, broken pottery. A cycle repeated by thousands, bound together by poverty, by resilience, and by the silent hope that tomorrow might bring something better. And walk together towards Buckingham Palace, where grief and power entwine in the figure of a queen. The smell seems to cling to your coat, your skin, and even your breath. The air is heavy with a mix of damp earth, rotting vegetables from yesterday's market, and the acrid tamps of chimney soot. Imagine yourself here. You wake before first light, cramped beside several others on a straw mattress alive with movement. Fleas, perhaps lice. Above you, a ceiling of cracked plaster threatens small avalanches with each vibration from passing carts outside. Stepping outside, you must tread carefully. Rats skitter between shadows, bold enough to cross your path even in daylight. You see it in neighbors' faces, the sunken cheeks, the hollow eyes, the slow, rattling breath. Yet life goes on around these quiet tragedies. The rhythm of their lives, your day, like so many others, is marked by toil. For children there is the chimney, narrow, blackened flues that must be climbed and scrubbed clean. The pay for such work is meager, but it is work. And work, in this place, is survival. Home and hearth such as they are returning at day's end offers little relief. Your room is no sanctuary. It is shared by strangers, or by too many members of your own family. Meals are simple and repetitive. A heel of bread, perhaps a boiled potato, or a splash of broth thickened with barley. At night, you listen to coughing in the next room, 2 footsteps in the alley below, to the scurry of small feet within the walls. The hidden cause of disease is a constant companion. Typhus, cholera, consumption. Children play in the street with rag dolls or iron hoops, laughter rising above the grime. Women gather at water pumps, sharing quiet conversation. A step back as you imagine yourself standing here, beneath soot-darkened eaves. Consider the simple acts that define existence. Waking, working, eating, resting. And now, let us draw back from the alley's close embrace. The lost sewers of London now. Let us step softly away from marble halls and royal apartments, and descend, in thought, beneath the skin of the city itself. Below the clamor of carts and booths, beneath shop fronts and taverns, lies another London, dark, damp, and rarely seen. A labyrinth of brick-lined tunnels where history once flowed, silently carrying the city's hidden burdens. And also one of the foulest: human waste, animal offal, and factory runoff slipped into the Thames by countless channels. At low tide, The river exhaled a stench so choking that curtains were soaked in chloride of lime just to keep the smell from Parliament's halls. A city awash in the mid-19th century, London was the largest city in the world. Disease followed these waters. Cholera stalked crowded alleys, claiming thousands in waves of epidemic. The engineer who listened to the river far beyond the city, where it could do less harm. He looked not at the river alone, but at the city's veins beneath its feet. Into this darkness came a man named Joseph Bazalgette, a civil engineer of quiet vision and stubborn will. Men toiled by day and night, lowering great blocks of granite into place, mixing mortar by hand, and shaping arches with wooden forms. Step by step, brick by brick, the skeleton of a modern city was laid down in the darkness. What he imagined was vast, over 1,000 miles of interconnected sewers, built of brick and mortar, gently sloping to guide waste eastward, building the labyrinth red brick walls worn smooth by generations of rushing water, iron gates rusted by time, tunnels echoing with the soft trickle of unseen streams. Imagine, if you can, the work itself. Lantern light dancing on damp brick, the scent of wet earth and lime dust. The tunnels grew high enough for a man to stand, wide enough to carry entire rivers of wastewater. They find forgotten chambers, hidden wells, and the silent testimony of human hands that shaped every arch and bend. Above, life went on almost unaware, carriages rattling across new embankments, gas lamps flickering on at dusk, children chasing hoops in narrow courts. Water drips gently from cracks overhead. Distant footsteps fade into silence. Here, beneath centuries of footsteps and carriages, the city breathes in darkness, unseen, but always there. Books warped in the heat. Curtains were soaked in chemicals. It was, quite literally, a crisis of smell. The great stink, and slip quietly through tall doors into another world. Velvet curtains, crystal chandeliers, and whispered conversations behind folding fans. Dinner with the upper 10,000, the great stink and the turning point. In the sweltering summer of 1858, the Thames reeked so badly that even Parliament could not bear to sit. And from this crisis, the final push came. Money and resolve to complete Bazalgette's grand design, the hidden legacy. Gentlemen stand stiffly in evening coats, high collars pressed to the chin, starched shirt fronts that barely allow them to breathe. The air here smells faintly of coal, smoke mixed with expensive perfume, beeswax polish, and freshly cut flowers. Today, the Victorian sewers still run beneath London's modern streets. They carry away what the city forgets, quietly preventing the return of plagues that once haunted London's crowded courtyards. A long table stretches before you, set with china bordered in gold, silver cutlery laid in careful order, and crystal glasses that catch the flicker of flame. Then follows roasted fowl, fish dressed with sauce, tender lamb with minted peas, dish after dish, carried by silent-footed servants. Servants in dark livery take coats and hats, guiding guests upstairs to drawing rooms lined with silk wallpaper, gilt-framed portraits, and crackling fireplaces. The air is warm, scented by arrangements of lilies and hothouse roses. From time to time, explorers and engineers still walk those tunnels by torchlight. A single misstep, the wrong joke, an overfamiliar tone, can mark someone as lacking breeding, closing doors for seasons to come. But here, in lamplight softened by silk shades, the world feels still and soft. Pausing to listen in this dark, echoing space, time seems to slow. And now, let us rise once more to the gaslit streets. Now, let the echo of dripping water fade behind us. Footmen snuffed the candles, leaving only the glow of embers in the hearth. Talk grows freer here. Voices lower. Sometimes the hostess will seat herself at the piano, playing a gentle nocturne as guests drift closer. We emerge from the hidden depths of London into wide avenues lined with stately houses, tall facades of pale stone, heavy doors polished to a soft gleam, and lamps glowing warmly in the early evening mist. Step closer. The past is never truly gone. It simply rests, waiting for curious minds and quiet nights to find it again. Tonight, we cross the threshold into a world known quietly, and sometimes ironically, as the upper 10,000. Those few whose wealth and titles set them above the restless city beyond their walls. A ritual of arrival. Picture yourself ushered through a marble-floored entrance hall. Soft music drifts from a corner, a violin or a small quartet playing gentle waltzes. Ladies wear gowns of heavy satin and tulle, glinting with jet beads or seed pearls. Conversation begins politely. Talk of weather, of the latest painting at the Royal Academy, of a newly arrived French ambassador. Always careful, always measured. The meal unfolds when the dining room doors open. Candlelight spills onto polished floors. The first course arrives. Clear soup or oysters on crushed ice. Each plate is smaller than modern meals, yet many courses together create a slow, luxurious ritual of taste and time. Conversation beneath crystal. Between courses, talk turns to the more private. Quiet scandals whispered behind folding fans. Rumors of inheritance, and speculation about Parliament's next move. Yet the laughter, though soft, is genuine. Here, connections are made and unmade, marriages hinted at, political alliances gently tested. Outside, beyond thick curtains, the city night hums with carts, coach wheels, and the occasional call of an after-dinner world. After the meal, gentlemen retire briefly to the smoking room. Dark wood panels, leather armchairs, the smell of cigars and cognac. Ladies gather in the drawing room, exchanging confidences about children, fashion, or charitable works. Later still, tea or coffee is served in delicate porcelain, its warmth a quiet endnote to the evening. Closing the doors when carriages arrive to carry guests home, the marble hall grows quiet again. The great house rests, its secrets kept within thick walls and heavy drapes, while outside fog curls slowly through empty street, from slum to salon. And so, we have wandered tonight from crowded soot-stained alleys to hidden rivers below, then risen through marble staircases into rooms of whispered power and soft music. Through it all, the heartbeat of Victorian London remains the same, a city of endless contrasts, hardship and privilege, grime and grandeur, sorrow and quiet triumph. Close your eyes now, and let the images drift gently into shadow. The drawing room after dinner. Imagine stepping back into the drawing room, its air warmer now from so many bodies gathered together, candles burning low in their silver sconces. A servant passes quietly between guests, refilling glasses of sherry or offering small sweetmeats, crystallized ginger, candied violets that leave a faint floral taste on the tongue. At the center of the room, a low fire glows behind a filigreed screen, its warmth softening the edge of a late London chill. Conversations gather in clusters, a knot of gentlemen in quiet debate over the coming railway bill. Two ladies comparing the latest French silks, a young debutante, cheeks flushed, listening intently to a story she will later recount to her mother in the carriage home. Games and gentle amusements, but for the slow, companionable rhythm of shuffled cards and softly murmured bids. The music drifts through the room, mingling with the rustle of taffeta skirts and the faint chime of porcelain cups. In some houses, a table is drawn aside for cards, whist or piquet played not for reckless sums. Others gather near the pianoforte where a guest with delicate hands coaxes a Chopin nocturne from ivory keys. Here they speak more quietly, words softened by the thick rugs underfoot and the hush of countless volumes lining the walls. A few guests wander toward the library, shelves of tooled leather bindings, heavy with the scent of old paper and polished wood. Moments between. Look closely, and you may see small moments rarely recorded in history books. A lady discreetly smoothing her glove, checking that a pearl is still firmly sewn to its wrist. A gentleman weary from a week of Parliament, letting his gaze linger on the flames as conversation flows around him. A servant standing still as a statue by the doorway, eyes alert to the slightest gesture of need. And Birmingham, their leisure secured by countless unseen hands, scrubbing, stitching, and shoveling far beyond these gilded walls. Such details, though forgotten by morning, make up the true life of these gatherings. Gestures of kindness, small irritations, the flicker of laughter behind a lace fan, reputation, family honor, the correct form of address, each a thread in the web that binds them as firmly as any law. Reflections on class and distance as the night deepens. You may sense, even through warmth and comfort, a thread of quiet tension that underlies these rooms. Lantern light glints off carriage doors as each guest is handed carefully inside. Guests rise, smoothing skirts and adjusting cravats, bidding farewells that are at once warm and cautiously formal. These are the fortunate few, their wealth resting upon industries that darken the skies of cities like Manchester, and the muffled creak of stairboards as servants retire to attic rooms. Yet even they live by rules just as rigid as those of any factory or workshop. The departure. Below, the household staff settle into brief, well-earned rest, knowing that with the dawn, the cycle begins anew. Fires to be lit, silver to be polished, bread to be baked before the city stirs into the lamplit grace of dining rooms where every word carries weight. The drawing room, so recently alive with laughter and music, now lies silent, save for the slow cooling of At last, carriages return to the wide avenue outside. Footmen bring fur-lined cloaks to protect against the damp London night. Within moments, the great house grows quiet again. A hush broken only by the slow clearing of dishes in the distant kitchen, the sleeping house. Imagine the rooms darkened now, candelabras snuffed, curtains drawn against morning's first light. Above, in shuttered bedrooms, the family sleeps. A last reflection, and so we leave behind the hush of the sleeping house, stepping softly back through history's door. Tonight, we have wandered from the worn stone of London's poorest streets, through hidden rivers and tunnels, from grime to grandeur, from hardship to privilege. All these threads wove together the fabric of Victorian life. And as your thoughts drift gently toward rest, remember, every age, no matter how distant, was lived moment by moment, by hearts not so different from our own. The last of the guests have departed now, the heavy doors eased shut behind them, and the faint rattle of carriage wheels is swallowed by the quiet of London's late hours. Yet even as the great house settles, it is not truly still. The silent work of many hands in the scullery. Faint lamplight flickers over wet flagstones as servants wash and dry the mountain of porcelain and silver laid aside after dinner. Water sloshes gently in tin basins, and the dull scrape of brushes echoes softly off stone walls. Upstairs, a housemaid moves quietly through the drawing room, setting fallen gloves aside, righting a chair that was nudged askew, and gently folding the music left on the piano. Each action is small, almost invisible, yet together they ready the house for morning, returning it to perfect order as if the night's gathering had never happened. The empty rooms remember nearly invisible marks of boot soles in the plush carpet. Even now in this hush, the rooms hold traces of what passed here. The faint scent of rosewater and tobacco smoke, the slight warmth still left in upholstered chairs where guests had leaned close to speak. The small candles, now mere pools of wax, stand silent witness to laughter, quiet confidences, and glances exchanged in shadowed corners. The grand dining table, cleared and polished once more, reflects the dim glow of a single night candle left burning by the hearth, a soft sentinel against the dark. Life above and below stairs. Their dreams, too, are filled with tomorrow's plans, invitations to answer, investments to watch, and the delicate art of maintaining a reputation. Their day began before dawn and ended long after the last guest departed. Shadows stretch across marble floors. Moonlight filters through tall windows, catching on gilt frames and polished banisters. But even in exhaustion, some whisper softly, trading scraps of gossip gathered unnoticed by the great and titled. It lingers in these unnoticed hours. In the hush that follows a banquet, in the cooling embers of a once roaring fire, in the silent footsteps of a maid carrying a candle past portraits of ancestors. Beyond the walls of the dining room, life divides and intersects in carefully drawn lines. In attic rooms under the steep slate roof, housemaids and footmen share narrow beds, worn blankets pulled high against the night's chill. In the master suite below, the household's owners rest in canopied beds, draped in heavy velvet, lulled by the steady ticking of an ormolu clock on the mantel. Time slows in candlelight as the night deepens. Time itself seems to slow. For a moment, the house feels alive, breathing gently in the settling dust, the quiet creak of settling timbers, and the faint rustle of drapery stirred by hidden drafts. History, here, is not only written in grand events or family names carved in stone. Echoes of the day. The sounds of the evening echo faintly still. The delicate chime of crystal glasses toasting an absent friend. The gentle murmur of a confidant confiding disappointment in a suitor. The restrained amusement of the slightly too bold joke of a rising young gentleman. Each story, carried away in the memory of those present, is woven into the greater tapestry of the city, and then, slowly, forgotten by history. Yet for this quiet moment, in the drifting half-sleep between waking and dreaming, we can listen to them still, the world outside these walls, and labor, power, and poverty, each sustained by the other, like two sides of the same worn coin. Outside, the city beyond the curtained windows sleeps fitfully. Newsboys doze on stone steps. A night watchman leans on his staff, lantern swinging gently. Stray cats slip between barrels and crates near the river docks. The great clock at Westminster tolls softly in the distance, its slow chime rolling across rooftops, marking each passing hour, and somewhere, perhaps in an alley not far away, a weary mother hushes a coughing child, the small flame of a tallow candle guttering in a cracked holder. A closing reflection. The hour grows late. Now, within these walls, the night is warm and quiet, the beds are soft, and tomorrow's meals are all but certain. Beyond them, life continues. Harder, colder, and often harsher, yet bound by the same city, the same fog, and the same dawn. It is this contrast, hidden yet always present, that truly defined the Victorian age. Luxury drifting to rest now. Let us leave these shadowed rooms behind. Step softly once more through the great hall, the marble floor cold underfoot, and out into the silent fog-draped street where the gas lamps burn low. The city sleeps, the river slides quietly past ancient wharves, and the moon keeps watch above roofs and chimneys alike. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the gentle weight of history settle around you like a worn but comforting cloak. For though the banquet has ended, the echoes remain, soft, distant, and timeless. Picture the house as it stands in the night. For stories of pale stone rising above the quiet avenue, its windows darkened, save for a last solitary light in the upper corridor. Beyond its walls, the fog rolls low across London streets, a soft, shifting veil that hides the distant rattle of a late hansom cab and the hoarse call of a watchman announcing the hour. Letters to write, and calls to return. Inside, the great rooms rest in stillness, but they are not empty of memory. Hidden corners and forgotten details step, if you will, back into the drawing room, now lit only by the dying glow of embers. His day began before dawn, and may begin again before the sun touches the city's chimney pots. The room is cold, the air faintly scented with wax and laundry soap. Look around slowly. On a side table, an ivory fan left behind by a guest in a haste. On the piano, a single page of music turns slightly, as if caught by a stray breath of air. A pair of gloves rests beside an untouched glass of sherry forgotten amid conversation that drew a guest away. Small details, almost invisible, yet each a silent record of laughter, secrets, and quiet observation. The clock and the passing of time on the marble mantel, a French clock, its brass pendulum swinging gently behind glass, marks the passing minutes in measured, deliberate ticks. A question about a niece's health, carefully phrased, might hide a discreet inquiry into dowries and inheritances. To those living in these rooms, time is both precious and heavy. Days planned by diaries thick with engagements, dinners, visits, yet the clock cares nothing for status. Its hands circle the hours in the same unhurried sweep, marking late night and early morning alike. Servants at rest and in motion while the family sleeps. A few servants remain awake. In the butler's pantry, a single candle burns beside a heavy account ledger, where neat columns record deliveries. A haunch of venison, 2 bottles of claret, a new shipment of tea from nearby, a hall boy scarcely more than 12, dozes on a stool, head nodding against a polished oak panel. In attic rooms, under sloping ceilings, housemaids and footmen sleep to a bed, worn blankets drawn high, and that without them the room is only stone plaster and fading candlelight. Yet even in sleep, duty clings lightly, an ear hufflet for the bell that might summon them, even in the night. The language of the table earlier, in that dining room now empty and still. So much was said, and so much left unsaid. In better quarters, a lawyer works by lamplight over a brief to be argued at dawn. A glance across silver candlesticks might hint at a new alliance between families. Polite laughter, delicate compliments, gentle self-deprecation, each phrase chosen with care, each silence carrying as much meaning as words. Behind the ease of conversation lies quiet discipline. Years of learning how to sit, to speak, to gesture, and when to remain perfectly still. Sound and silence for a moment. Imagine standing alone in the dining room's long hush. Without conversation, you notice what the ear misses during the banquet. The faint creak of wood cooling as the fire dies. The distant drip of water in an unseen gutter. A door latch shifting as a late servant passes down the corridor. Your own breath, soft and slow. In this silence, the grandeur feels both comforting and slightly fragile, as if these walls remember that splendor is built on human labor and human presence. The city beyond these windows. The city stretches outward in every direction. In the East End, night workers and breweries and print shops labor under gas lamps. At the docks, stevedores unload cargo from distant continent. The faint smell of cooling soot rises, mixing with the sweeter scent of beeswax and faded roses. In cramped tenements, families share narrow beds, a single blanket between them. The same fog curls past all these windows alike, softening grandeur and squalor into the same muted gray. Why these rooms matter. These grand houses were more than homes. They were theaters of influence. To the last airborne in these walls, a dinner here might decide an investment in a railway, a posting in India, or support for a reform bill that could touch thousands of lives, and felt the quiet pride and hidden fears of those who gathered at the upper 10,000s table. The conversations, carefully polite, could shift the course of inheritance, marriage, or even war, yet all done beneath a flicker of candlelight, among whispers and gentle laughter. Step softly into the fog, and leave the night to its own quiet history. Small moments and secret thoughts consider, too, the quiet, private moments the history books never record. A hostess stepping briefly into the dim corridor to catch her breath. A young guest, uncertain, reciting in her mind the list of proper responses taught by her governess. A tired footman, pausing in the stairwell to stretch his aching back and roll his shoulders. A married couple, seated side by side yet lost in separate thoughts, each moment so small, yet each a real heartbeat in the life of these houses. As night deepens, the last embers fall to ash. A housemaid enters, her steps soft on the Turkish carpet, and gently empties the fireplace. Great. She glances once around the room to be sure nothing is left undone, then closes the door quietly behind her. At last, true stillness descends. From stillness, memory. Even in darkness these rooms remember. Polished banisters worn by countless hands, floors creaking where footmen have stood for years, mirrors that have reflected generations. From the first young bride who crossed this threshold outside, dawn begins its slow approach, unseen yet inevitable. Closing reflection, we have wandered together through this segment from first candlelit courses to the final hush of midnight corridors. We have listened to whispered alliances, watched servants labor unseen. In this stillness, the grandeur remains, but softened, human, and gently fading into memory. And so, we take one last look at the sleeping house. Dinner with the upper 10,000. Now the hour is very late. The city itself seems to breathe in slow, shallow breaths under the weight of fog and night. The grand house, though resting, is not quite lifeless. A soft pulse of presence lingers, as if the walls themselves remember. The afterglow of the banquet, a single pearl button fallen and rolled unnoticed into a corner, the scent of rich sauces still clinging to heavy drapes. Though the table has been cleared and the fires banked, faint impressions remain. A thin ring where a warm dish rested too long, and the brisk, silent glide of servants moving to refill glasses or collect plates. In the chandelier above, waxes dripped in delicate, frozen rivulets, catching the faintest glint of moonlight filtering through tall windows. The carpet underfoot holds the memory of many feet, the deliberate tread of gentlemen, the lighter, hesitant step of young debutants. The private spaces beyond the dining room. Beyond the formal rooms, there are quieter spaces rarely seen by guests. A writing room lined with mahogany shelves, where a ledger of household accounts rests open on a desk. A morning room where the lady of the house keeps notes on charities and social visits. In one small sitting room, a half-finished letter lies beside a pen and a blotter, its ink now dry, the thoughts paused until morning. These private rooms, less adorned than the grand halls, speak quietly of daily life, the slow management of estates, the delicate weaving of invitations and alliances, the balancing of appearance and truth. The quiet of the upper floors climb in your mind. The broad staircase lined with portraits, ancestors in powdered wigs and velvet gowns, watching silently from gilt frames, tucking in a stray arm or adjusting a blanket. At the landing, thick curtains are drawn against the night, muffling the city's distant murmurs. Upstairs, bedrooms lie behind heavy doors. The master suite, softly lit by a single oil lamp left burning low. The children's nursery, where governess checks once more on sleeping figures. The air here feels different, scented faintly with lavender sachets and clean linen, a quiet refuge from the formality below. Servants' paths, hidden and parallel, while grand staircases wind gracefully through the house. Narrower back staircases run beside them, plain wooden steps worn smooth by decades of hurried feet. Through these hidden passages, servants move almost invisibly, carrying hot water for washing, messages between rooms, or late-night trays of broth to an ailing guest. Their world is close yet separate, sharing the same roof, breathing the same air, yet living lives shaped by different rules and rhythms. Dreams in the house. As the night deepens, each sleeper drifts into dreams shaped by the day just ended. The master of the house, perhaps, dreams of tomorrow's meeting at his club, a chance to secure backing for a new railway venture, or to discreetly settle a brewing scandal. His wife might dream of lace and silk, of her daughter's first season, or of a rival hostess whose charm she both admires and quietly dreads. A young guest may dream of a single conversation by the fire, replaying each word and glance in the hope it held meaning. Quiet details, moments unnoticed at the time yet carried forward in worn wood, faded fabric, and the lingering scent of beeswax and smoke. And in the servants' rooms under the eaves, dreams come, too, of families left in distant villages, of an unexpected coin in the hand from a generous guest, or simply of a few hours' rest unbroken by the bell. The weight of history. These rooms hold layers of memory built over years, even generations. The house's heartbeat quickens, softly at first, preparing to receive the day. A chair placed in the same spot for decades, a mark on a windowsill where a child once scratched a name, a hidden letter slipped long ago behind a panel, never meant to be found. Though history books often remember only great deeds and names, the real texture of the past is built from these small morning approaches beyond it. The long table is empty now, silver polished to a quiet gleam, candles cold and spent. Outside, the night sky pales almost the first gray hint of dawn touches the tops of chimneys and spires. In the kitchens, the earliest stirrings begin, the scuff of boot soles on flagstones, the clink of iron pots being set upon the range. A maid fills scuttles with coal to warm the bedrooms before the family wakes. Yet for a few moments more, the upper floors remain hushed, wrapped in dreams and gentle shadows. A last glance before dawn. Imagine standing alone in the dim corridor, the walls hung with family portraits whose painted eyes watch silently. At your back, the door to the dining room stands ajar. The night stretches on, deeper and quieter than before. Here, in this hush before day, it is easier to sense what often slips past notice, that these houses, for all their splendor, were as much human and fragile as those who built and inhabited them. A gentle farewell. And so, as dawn brightens behind drawn curtains, we turn slowly from these rooms. The grand dining hall, the drawing rooms of whispered laughter, the quiet bedrooms above. We step softly down the broad staircase, pass once more through the marble-floored entrance hall, and out into the fog-draped street where the gas lamps burn low. Behind us, the house holds its secrets a little longer, waiting to wake. And as your mind drifts towards sleep, remember, even the grandest history was built, day by ordinary breaths, quiet thoughts, and unnoticed moments. The city outside lies wrapped in mist. The air tastes faintly of coal smoke and damp stone. Inside, the great house slumbers, yet memory and presence linger in every corner, as if the walls themselves are still awake. Lingering warmth, the dining room, hours after guests departed, still holds a hush of warmth from the fire long banked. A faint scent of clove and roasted meats hangs in the heavy drapes, mixed with beeswax polish and the softer perfume of roses brought in fresh that morning. Along the edge of the carpet, the delicate pattern is disturbed, where chairs were drawn back and replaced. Here and there, wax droplets lie on the table's polished wood. Small, pale fossils of a single evening's light. Rooms beyond sight, beyond the formal dining room. There are spaces rarely glimpsed by visitors. A china closet where footmen have stacked plates, their gilt edges catching the lantern light. A long, narrow scullery where steam still curls from a basin, fogging a small window that looks onto a stone yard. In the pantry, a cold roast under a silver dome waits until morning, prepared in case a family member, restless or unwell, wakes in the night. Every object seems to rest in its place, yet all carry the invisible weight of purpose, routine, and human touch. A household in layers, and custom codes learned over years, sometimes painfully, sometimes passed quietly from mother to daughter, or senior maid to junior. The house is built not just in stone and plaster, but in layers of people and silent rules. On the grand staircase, the master's family may pause to greet a favored guest, while the servants use hidden stairways, carrying coals or linens unseen. At night, those narrow staircases become pathways of quiet vigilance, a housemaid walking them in soft slippers, carrying a candlestick whose small flame bends in drafts. Each step, each careful movement, keeps the great machinery of household comfort running, a machinery designed never to reveal its own workings. Silent conversations. Imagine the unspoken language of glances and gestures. A butler's raised eyebrow signaling a footman to refill a glass before it is requested. A lady of the house, with a subtle incline of her head, inviting a new guest to speak. So much was said without words, guided by invisible codes of class. Footsteps fading into history. Picture the long gallery upstairs, its parquet floor faintly creaking underfoot. Along the walls hang portraits, ancestors in wigs and lace, powdered faces, how familiar. A guest might pause there after dinner, peering at the painted eyes and candlelight, and wonder what stories lie behind the calm expressions. How many footsteps crossed this same floor? How many conversations echoed under this same painted ceiling? Decisions, secrets, laughter that history never recorded. Within walls, contrasts beneath the same roof. Life unfolded so differently. In the drawing room, a soft waltz played by candlelight, gentle conversation punctuated by polite laughter. In the servants' hall below, a simpler meal. Bread, cheese, cold meats, shared quickly, standing at times, before duty called again. Yet both worlds shared the same winter drafts sneaking under doors, the same slow strike of the distant church clock marking the hours. Above all, both shared the same truth, that dawn would come, as unchanging as the rhythm of breath. Objects that remember even now. The house holds traces of touch and use. The worn spot on a balustrade where a child once slid a hand each morning. The slightly tilted portrait that no one quite remembers to straighten. The faint indentation in a velvet chair cushion, shaped over years by the same favored guest. History survives not only in dates and names, but in these quiet signs of human presence. Fragile as dust, yet enduring. The deepest quiet beyond midnight. The house reaches its truest stillness. No footsteps cross the gallery. The fire in the drawing room has fallen to cold ash, and the chandeliers hang silent, their crystals catching only faint moonlight. In the master's bedroom, breath rises and falls gently under embroidered covers. In attic rooms, servants lie curled in narrow beds, dreaming brief, unrecorded dreams. Only the old clock on the landing continues, its slow tick a heartbeat echoing through halls and stairwells. The city that waits outside, London too seems to hold its breath. The Thames, dark and heavy, slides past stone embankments. Warehouse doors stand locked. Stray cats move silently across wet cobbles. The rattle of carts, the whistle of trains at distant stations. Even the restless city pauses for a moment before the first flicker of dawn. And yet, beyond the quiet, tomorrow's clamor waits. The call of street vendors. Before the first bell rings in a small room below stairs, the under-housemaid stirs first, striking a flint to light the kitchen range. Soon, others will follow, the scullery maid carrying water, the cook preparing the day's bread, the footman brushing lint from the master's coat. Before the family rises, the entire household will have been awake for hours, smoothing, polishing, arranging, ensuring the illusion of effortless comfort. Yet for a final few moments, the house itself seems almost a dream. Silent rooms adrift between the memory of last night and the certainty of a new day. A final reflection. Think, as you listen, of all those whose names history never bothered to record. The boy who opened the front door each morning to sweep coal dust from the steps. The cook who tasted every dish before it reached the table, yet never sat among the guests. The guests themselves, whose laughter now lingers only as a soft echo in forgotten rooms. Together, their unseen moments build the living fabric of the Victorian age. Fragile, fleeting, but real. Stepping away now, imagine yourself walking once more through the entrance hall. The slow beat of the old clock, the tiled floor cool underfoot, the tall, carved door opening softly to the mist outside. The heavy air of dawn thick with quiet promise. Behind you, the house remains. Windows shuttered, rooms waiting to wake, stories still held within stone and wood. Ahead the city begins to stir. But for now, you carry with you the hush of dining rooms and drawing rooms, the warmth of fading embers. Close your eyes, let these images drift softly into darkness. A table set with polished silver, a chandelier dimming to gray. The hour now edges toward 3, when night lies at its deepest, and even the city beyond seems half forgotten. The distant, soothing toll of morning bells. History, like sleep, comes gently. Not in grand declarations, but in quiet moments passed from breath to breath. And as you rest, remember, even in stillness, the past remains alive, waiting for the curious and the quiet-hearted to find it again. The curtains there, drawn tight, stir ever so slightly, letting in a single ribbon of silver moonlight that falls across polished floorboards. The grand house, so alive only hours ago with laughter, candlelight, and quiet intrigue, has become a place of shadows and memory. Here there are no tapestries or silk drapes to hold in warmth, only plain wooden walls, narrow iron bedsteads, and a small chipped basin for washing in the morning. Quiet above and below. Above, in the master bedroom, a clock ticks beside the hearth, each soft stroke swallowed by heavy curtains and thick carpets. A candle on the dressing table has burned low, its flame bending slightly in a draught from the tall windows. In the attic rooms, the servants sleep deeply, their breath rising in small white clouds in the cold air. Sounds only night reveals without conversation and music. The house's own voice grows clearer. A slow creak as timbers settle against the night's damp chill. The faint scratch of a mouse behind the wains, the far-off drip of water from a roof gutter into the stone yard below. These quiet sounds would be masked by the bustle of day. Yet now, in darkness, they become gentle companions. Small reminders that even stillness is never truly silent. The portraits watching in the long gallery, moonlight catches gilt frames and painted faces. Generations watch silently. An ancestor in powdered wig, a lady in a dress stiff with embroidery, a solemn child whose eyes follow every visitor. Though dust gathers in the corners of the frames, the gaze of these portraits endures. Quiet witnesses to family triumphs, whispered arguments, and fleeting joys that once filled these rooms. The cold hearth, the smell of old leather bindings and beeswax hangs in the air. Dry, familiar, comforting. In the drawing room, the hearth is now grey ash, and the marble mantel feels cold to the touch. Yet here, too, traces of the evening remain. A faint perfume on a chairback, a dropped handkerchief half hidden under a low table, a single dried rose petal near the hearth. Small, fragile things, almost nothing at all. Yet together, they whisper of what passed only hours ago. The library at night. Further down the corridor lies the library, its tall bookcases locked behind glass. In darkness, the titles can hardly be read. Histories, travel journals, volumes of poetry whose pages have not been turned in years. On the large desk, papers rest beside a quill, its nib still stained with ink. Here, amid shelves and silence, the thoughts of those long gone remain faintly alive, waiting patiently for the next reader's hand. The smallest details everywhere. The house keeps record in details easily missed. A scuff mark at the corner of a stair tread, worn by generations of careful feet. A crack in the plaster beside a window, where frost and time have gently parted the surface. A patch of faded color on the wallpaper, showing where once a candle bracket hung. To the day's visitors, these are invisible. But at night, in quiet thought, they become the true history, made not of dates, but of presence. Breath of the sleeping house. Imagine walking the corridor now, candle in hand. The flame casts soft light onto velvet drapes and wood-paneled walls, and your footsteps sound louder than you expect, cushioned by rugs, yet echoing slightly in the high ceilings. The air feels cool, almost damp, carrying scents left behind by the day. Roast meats and wine, beeswax, lavender sachets tucked into drawers, and the faintest trace of wood smoke. Every room holds its breath, waiting for dawn. The house's divided world above stairs. Heavy beds, embroidered coverlets and dreams shaped by power and reputation. Below stairs, narrow cots, patched blankets, and dreams shaped by duty and tiredness. Yet both worlds are held by the same walls, warmed by the same hearths, kept safe by the same locks turned quietly at midnight. In these hours, the boundary softens. Everyone, master, guest, or servant, becomes simply a sleeper under the same roof. Night thoughts. Perhaps the lady of the house wakes briefly, mind turning over a conversation from the evening, a remark that might have hinted at scandal, a promise of support for a charitable cause. Perhaps a young footman thinks of his mother far away in the countryside, wondering if she is warm tonight, whether the money he sent has reached her. These moments of thought, though unseen, are part of the living history of the house, as real, in their own quiet way, as the family portraits are gilded mirrors. Before the world wakes, the sky outside the tall windows remains dark, but a faint paling begins at the eastern horizon. In the scullery, the under housemaid, first to rise, strikes a spark into kindling. The small flame grows, catching the edge of the coal laid ready in the grate. Soon the kitchen will fill with the smell of baking bread. The copper pans will shine in fresh water. The servants' footsteps will again sound softly through hidden corridors. And upstairs, the household will slowly wake, believing or wishing to believe that comfort and order simply appear with the day. One last look, as we step softly back through the dining room, its table now bare except for a single candlestick. We sense that nothing here is truly still. Even in darkness, the house remembers. Every conversation, every laughter, every glance shared or avoided. The wood, the fabric, the stone itself carry faint traces of those who lived, hoped, feared, and loved within these walls. A final reflection. But as a keeper of countless quiet human moments, the unseen heart of history, we began the evening at a glittering table, watched conversations fold and unfold, followed the guests' laughter into softer music, then deeper into silence. Now, at the edge of dawn, we see the house not as a stage for wealth and power. The hour nears 4, when the world is at its quietest, that thin place between night and morning, dream and waking. As your thoughts drift toward rest, remember, history is not only what happened, but what was felt, feared, wished for, and quietly forgotten. In these hours before dawn, those softer histories live still, waiting to be heard by those patient enough to listen. The grand house rests, but it is not entirely still, and dances along the carved backs of high chairs now empty and silent. Hidden lamps and gentle shadows. In a corner of the dining room stands a single lamp left burning low, its flame trembling behind frosted glass, casting blurred, gentle shadows onto gilded cornices. Rich scent of roast meats cooled to fat and bone, a sweeter note of wine still clinging to corks, the faint sharpness of mustard and horseradish. That soft, wavering light glints faintly off silver in the sideboard, catches in the curve of a crystal decanter. The room feels larger at night, its emptiness stretching beyond what daylight reveals. The smell of yesterday's feast. Though the table is cleared, traces of the feast linger in the air. The deep, even now, hours later, these scents mix with tobacco smoke from a gentleman's after-dinner pipe, and the dusty, almost metallic smell of old draperies. Together they create a perfume of history, a quiet record of laughter, stories, and glances exchanged under echoes of music. Earlier, in the drawing room, a young lady played the pianoforte softly, her notes drifting through half-open doors. Now the music is gone, but if you listen, you might sense its echo, the ghost of melody in the hush, the remembered vibration of strings in the night air. Even the piano itself seems different now, keys closed under polished wood, silent, waiting for morning. Along the gallery. Imagine walking slowly along the upper gallery, candle in hand. The portraits here, pale-faced children in lace collars, solemn men with signet rings, ladies turned slightly to show jeweled necklaces, seem almost to watch your passing. By day, these images are part of the glanced at but quickly forgotten. By night, they seem nearer, silent witnesses to everything the daylight conceals. The writing desk left open in a smaller sitting room beyond the dining hall. The writing desk remains open. Here, by the faint light, you see an unfinished letter, neat copperplate handwriting trailing off beside it. An ivory-handled letter opener lies atop a small stack of invitations. Some accepted, some discreetly declined. The ink has dried now, but the words hint at the quiet burdens of reputation. Alliances to maintain, kindnesses to repay, and unspoken rivalries. The gilded mirror on the wall. A tall gilded mirror reflects the quiet room. Earlier, it held the flickering brightness of many candles, the shifting colors of gowns and jewels, the movement of hands, lifting glasses to lips. Now, it shows only emptiness, shadows, and the single flame of your candle, reminding us that splendor depends as much on presence as on things. Without the people to fill it, the room becomes only wood, glass, and fabric. Beautiful, but empty. In the stylist hour somewhere deep in the house, the door creaks as it settles in its frame. A slow, cold draft drifts across stone floors. The flame of your candle bends low, throwing shadows across carved paneling. In that hush, even your own breath sounds louder. A slow inhale tinged with the scent of wax and dust. A soft exhale stirring a curl of smoke. These small, living sounds remind us that history isn't only what is written down, but also what is breathed, felt, and quietly passed between heartbeats. Below the floorboards below, in the basement larders, cold meats rests under damp cloths. A jug of milk stands in a shallow basin of water, kept cool through the night. A row of bread, baked the day before, lies under linen, its crust rough, faintly scented of yeast and wood ash. These humble stores, hidden from the view of guests, are the quiet backbone of the feasts above, as essential to the household as any tapestry or chandelier. Hidden stories. Every object in the house holds a hidden story. The chipped corner of a marble hearth, where a child once dropped a wooden toy. A hairline crack in a teacup, kept for years because it once belonged to a beloved aunt. The slightly different shade of paint around a doorframe, marking where a bell pull was removed when fashions changed. These quiet marks of use and change are history's true fingerprints, faint but enduring. The approach of dawn outside. Beyond tall windows, the fog begins to lift. The first suggestion of dawn appears, not yet light, but a paling of the deepest black into soft gray. The city itself stirs. A baker stokes his ovens. A carriage rattles over cobbles, carrying market goods. In distant tenements, weary parents rise to tend a crying child. Within these walls, the master still sleeps beneath embroidered covers, and the youngest maid lights the scullery fire, her breath clouding in the cold air. A gentle farewell to the night for these final moments. We stand quietly in the dining room one last time. The silver's cool to the touch. The curtains hang heavy and still. The air feels thick with the weight of so many conversations, promises, and secrets. Soon, servants will open the shutters, light will pour in, and the grand house will wake, its silence replaced by routine and ritual. But for now, in this hush before dawn, it is a place suspended between memory and expectation, where history lingers like breath on cold glass, a last reflection as you drift towards sleep. Remember, what makes these walls rich is not only gold and silk, but the unseen life lived between them. The quickened heartbeat behind a carefully chosen word, the quiet regret in an unfinished letter, the silent prayers of those who labored unseen. And though the candles burn low and the embers turn to ash, something of those moments remains, waiting in shadowed corners, for anyone still enough to listen. The night is stretched long and deep, but now, at the very edge of morning, the grand house begins to stir almost impotent. Yet for a few final moments it remains mostly a place of shadows, faint scents, and the softest memories. The cold air of morning. Through tall windows, the air feels colder now, a pale dawn chill slipping past thick velvet curtains. The dying fire in the hearth has left nothing but grey ash and a few dull embers, too weak to warm the vast room. In the half-light, the polished table looks different. Stripped of dishes and candles, it becomes simply wood, its grain marked by faint scratches, water rings, and the dull glow of long polishing. History is written here not in ink, but in wear, touch, and time. Forgotten corners in the hush. You might notice what daytime guests never do. A thin crack running across the plaster rosette above the chandelier. A loose thread in the brocade chair nearest the window, tugged over years by restless hands. A scuff on the painted skirting board where a maid's bucket once brushed past. These small imperfections, invisible amid evening candlelight and conversation, speak quietly of real use, of generations living, gathering, and departing. Lingering warmth in objects, even in stillness. Some warmth remains in the room. A silver serving spoon, left on the sideboard, still faintly warm from the hand that placed it there. A chair cushion, faintly indented where a guest once sat, leaning forward to catch a whispered remark. The scent of beeswax, released by the day's warmth, now cooling and fading into the broader chill. The night has stretched long and deep, but now, at the very edge of morning, the grand house begins to stir almost together. These are small reminders that this grand house was never just architecture, but a place of living quiet thoughts and passing present. Yet for a few final moments it remains mostly a place of shadows, faint scents, and the softest memories. The cold air of morning through tall windows. The air feels colder now, a pale dawn chill slipping past thick velvet curtains. The dying fire in the hearth has left nothing but grey ash and a few dull embers, too weak to warm the vast room. In half-lights a polished table looks different. Stripped of dishes and candles, it becomes simply wood, its grain marked by faint scratches, water rings, and the dull glow of long polishing. History is written here not in ink, but in wear, touch, and time. Forgotten corners in the hush. You might notice what daytime guests never do. A thin crack running across the plaster rosette above the chandelier. A loose thread in the brocade chair nearest the window, tugged over years by restless hands. A scuff on the painted skirting board where a maid's bucket once brushed past. These small imperfections, invisible amid evening candlelight and conversation, speak quietly of real use, of generations living, gathering, and departing, lingering warmth in objects, even in stillness. Some warmth remains in the room. A silver serving spoon, left on the sideboard, still faintly warm from the hand that placed it there. A chair cushion, faintly indented, where a guest once sat, leaning forward to catch a whispered remark. The scent of beeswax, released by the day's warmth, now cooling and fading into the broader chill. Together, these are small reminders that this grand house was never just architecture, but a place of living but quiet thoughts and passing presence. The gentle awakening below stares in the kitchens far below. The underhouse made small flint sparks against kindling. A faint, sharp scent of smoke curls upward, meeting the heavier smells of coal and stone. Soon, larger fires will be lit. Copper kettles will hiss and clatter. The warm scent of baking bread will rise to fill the cold air. But now, in this first hush, the kitchen itself feels almost like a chapel. Still, dark, and quietly waiting. The servants' first thoughts, even before fully waking. Servants think of duty. The maid wonders if she will have enough hot water carried up to the mistress's dressing room before the bell rings. The footman, stretching sore shoulders, thinks of yesterday's dinner. Did the master notice the wine service? Did any guest frown at a delayed course? These thoughts, practical and fleeting, are part of what keeps the household running so smoothly, unseen by those who dine above. A hallway at dawn. Imagine now walking softly through the grand hallway at the heart of the house. By lamplight, marble floors seemed golden. Now, in dawn's first gray, they appear cool and solemn, almost austere. A forgotten glove rests atop a side table, palm open as if still holding warmth. A tall vase of last night's roses drooped slightly, petals edged with early will. Above, a skylight shows the paling sky, streaked with soft clouds. The weight of memory. These rooms carry more than furniture. They carry memory. Every footstep that ever crossed these carpets, every laugh, every sigh, every sharp word quickly regretted, somehow they echo still. The dining room, in particular, feels heavy with memory. The tension before a toast, the quiet pride of a host presenting his table, the subtle glances exchanged across candlelight. Though unseen, these moments linger as real as the portraits on the walls. Soft contrasts of life soon. The master will rise, washed and dressed in linen and wool, stepping into a day shaped by choice and conversation. The young scullery maid, in her thin cotton dress, will scrub pans from last night's feast. Her thoughts, half on her aching back, half on the hope of a kind word. Different worlds, yet joined by the same stone underfoot, the same draught through unseen cracks in the walls. And when night returns, both will again lie under the same roof, held by the same soft hush. The library before light stepped quietly into the library once more. Books line the walls from floor to ceiling, their spines now blurred in the dim morning. The scent of leather and dust feels stronger, mixed with the sharp tang of old ink. On the wide oak desk, a small blotter, a brass inkwell, and a sheet of paper await the day's hand. Here, in quiet, plans were made, letters written that shaped marriages, estates, even small pieces of history beyond these walls. Yet at this hour, the library is simply a quiet refuge, alive only with the waiting promise of thought. Moments never recorded. History rarely writes down what happens in these hours. The silent passage of a housemaid carrying coals, the hesitation before knocking softly at a bedroom door, a guest unable to sleep, standing by the window and watching lamps fade into dawn. Yet these are as true as battles and parliaments, moments of living that quietly weave together the world. The first light falls at last. Light touches the tallest window. The gilt edges of picture frames catch a pale gleam. The carved backs of chairs stand revealed from shadow. Silver on the sideboard shines softly, no longer needing candlelight. Day breaks not all at once, but in gentle inches, floorboards growing less shadowed, dust motes beginning to drift and glitter, the air itself seeming to lighten. A closing breath for a final moment. Pause in the dining room's quiet, and listen, truly listen, to the silence that still holds every whisper and breath of those who gathered here. Feel the cold stone underfoot, smell the fading perfume of yesterday's feast. Bells will ring, voices will return, laughter will once again rise between polished silver and tall windows. Soon, but for now, the room belongs only to memory, and to those patient enough to stand quietly, letting history's softer truths speak. A gentle step away, step softly out into the hall, passing portraits that watch without judgment. The great door stands closed, but daylight now seeps around its edges. As you drift away from these rooms, remember, history's grandeur rests upon unremarked moments, footsteps, glances, small kindnesses, each as real and enduring as carved stone. And though the house wakes to another day, its quiet night lingers, waiting to be remembered. The kitchen fire's rekindled far below stairs. A small fire now burns brighter in the kitchen range, Orange coals glow under blackened iron. The smell of wood smoke and early bread dough rolls out into the cold scullery. The under-housemaid's footsteps cross flagstones still cold from the night. In her quiet hands, she carries yesterday's ashes out into the yard, careful not to wake those above. Here amid copper pans and flour dust, morning always begins first. The invisible work before the family rises. The quiet ballet of preparation begins. A maid carries hot water upstairs in brimming pitchers, steam curling in pale ribbons behind her. A footman polishes the last streaks from silver knife blades, his cloth worn smooth from daily use. The cook, wiping flour from her cheek, sets dough to rise under a linen cloth. Knowing the master expects fresh bread, crisp crust crackling softly on the table, all of this happens almost silently. The invisible foundation beneath the splendor that will reawaken upstairs. The drawing room at dawn. In the drawing room, first light softens the room's sharp edges. Colors, vivid by candlelight, look gentler now. Pale rose, wallpaper, cream moldings, the muted gleam of brass lamps. A low chair by the window shows a faint depression in its cushion. The ghost of someone who sat there late into the night, perhaps thinking quietly or listening to the echo of music. The piano lid, closed now, reflects the pale morning, its ivory keys hidden, waiting for hands to wake them. The silent library down the hall. The library remains cool and dark, but a single window faces east. Through that window, light pools slowly across the oak writing desk. Ink bottles glint, papers rustle faintly in a draught, and the smell of leather bindings deepens with the warmth of day. Here before letters are opened or replies written, the air feels thick with possibility, as if the walls remember every decision, every promise, every plan that first took shape in this very room. Upstairs, the house stirs in the family's private rooms. Soft sounds begin. The faint squeak of wardrobe doors, a gentle knock before the maid enters carrying hot water, the sigh of bedsheets pulled back. A dressing gown rustles as the master of the house sits on the edge of his bed, eyes still heavy with sleep. Through tall windows, the sky shows its first color, pale gold brushed with pearl. Moments of private thought. Before conversation and duty return, there is a quiet space. The moment just after waking, when the day has not yet claimed the mind. The lady of the house, still seated before her looking-glass, pauses, thinking of letters to write, visits to receive, a daughter's coming debut, or perhaps simply of the weather beyond the heavy curtains. In the attic rooms, a housemaid laces her boots with chilled fingers, wondering if there will be time tonight to mend her only good apron. Different lives, different concerns, yet all linked by the same slow arrival of morning. The first formal movements as the clock in the hall strikes 7. Routine returns in small ceremonies. The dining room doors are opened. The heavy curtains are pulled back, spilling daylight across polished wood. Tablecloths are shaken and laid smooth. Fresh bread is sliced onto warmed plates, silver lids lifted to reveal gently steaming dishes. In the hall, the butler glances once more at the long case clock, ensuring the breakfast hour keeps to its quiet precision. Echoes of last night. Though the room is clean and bright, something of last night lingers, a faint scent of spent candles in the air. The memory of soft laughter, lowered voices, and glances not recorded in ledgers. History lives not only in what is documented, but in the spaces between. The heartbeats before speaking, the choice to remain silent, the private thought the world beyond the house. Beyond tall windows, London itself wakes hoofbeats on cobbles, the distant call of street vendors, the low hum of carts carrying milk and bread. The city's great and poor alike must rise. The machinery of markets, offices, and drawing rooms winding into motion. Yet inside these walls, the house shields its family for a few moments longer. Warm rooms, soft slippers, and breakfast laid quietly upon white linen. The weight of continuity this day is both unique and like countless others before. The same rooms filled by different generations, the same silver polished by different hands, the same window reflecting countless dawns. Here, continuity itself becomes a kind of comfort, the sense that life goes on, quietly, in patterns shaped by memory, habit, and the slow pulse of time. Before the first guest arrives, soon, letters will be delivered by gloved hands, bringing news from distant cousins, quiet invitations, or rumors from town. The master will retreat to his study, the lady to her morning room. Servants will move briskly yet silently through halls, setting the stage for the day to unfold. Yet, for now, the house rests on the cusp, awake, but not yet fully claimed by duty, conversation, and expectation. A gentle departure, as we step softly out into the entrance hall. The morning light is now bright enough to catch in polished marble and gilt-framed mirrors. The heavy door stands ready to open. Beyond it, the city waits, unchanged in its noise, worry, and wonder. Behind us, the dining room holds only a quiet promise. Candles will again be lit, chairs drawn back, and voices gathered once more around the long table. A final reflection. History, in the end, is built less by grand speeches than by small, unseen gestures. A maid smoothing a tablecloth, a letter written at dawn, a moment of silence in a quiet corridor. These delicate, often forgotten threads are what truly bind past to present, and what remain softly glowing in the hush before day fully breaks. Morning has now truly arrived. The soft hush that held the house so tenderly all night slowly dissolves, replaced by the quiet choreography of daily routine. The house awakens fully. Servants move through back staircases, carrying fresh water, coals, and breakfast trays. The master descends, pausing to adjust his cravat by the tall gilt mirror in the hall. The lady of the house sits in her morning room, letters open before her, the seal broken on wax still faintly warm from the fire. The large clock in the hallway strikes 8, a deeper, more confident sound in the soft hours of the night. Life resumes its steady rhythm. Rooms that remember, though. The dining room is aired and refreshed. Something of last night lingers in its corners, the faintest trace of perfume caught in drapery folds. A scuff mark left on the polished floor where a guest shifted a chair, the quiet echo of laughter now swallowed by the room's stillness. Even cleaned and readied for new guests, these rooms keep the soft imprint of what passed. Outside, the city stirs. The world beyond the tall windows is fully awake now. Hooves clatter over cobblestone slick with early dew. A newsboy's voice rises above the hum, calling headlines of parliament and scandal. Market stalls open, the smell of bread and fresh produce drifting on the cool breeze. Yet inside these walls, life moves more slowly, measured in glances, letters, and small rituals. Small ceremonies of the day. Fresh flowers are placed in porcelain vases. A second pot of tea is brewed and carried quietly into the study. Candles, now unnecessary, are snuffed and replaced for the evening to come. Every object, from the heavy curtain tassels to the delicate china cup, is touched, arranged, or refreshed. Each action part of a daily, unseen rite. A pause to reflect. As you walk once more through the dining room, you might pause by the great table, newly laid for breakfast. Think of all the conversations that unfolded here, stories told, alliances formed, quiet confessions shared only by the shifting candlelight. Think of those whose names history forgot, the footman pouring wine, the housemaid who polished silver until it gleamed, the cook tasting sauces in the quiet kitchen below. Each, in their own way, shaped the living memory of these rooms. History's softest threads. What endures is not only the gilt corset and heavy drapes, but the softer threads, the breath caught before a question, the sigh of relief when laughter returned, the silent promise carried in a letter begun before dawn. These are the real heart of history. Fleeting, fragile, and human. The house in you now. As morning light floods through the tall windows, the house lets go of the night. Its walls stretch, doors open, voices rise, the slow pulse of living returns. But you carry something with you, the quiet sense that history is not only battles and kings, but the delicate hush of empty rooms, the soft memory of a single evening's warmth, and the gentle certainty that life moves forward, quietly, day after day. If you enjoyed wandering these candlelit halls, if the quiet stories and small forgotten moments brought you peace, please consider subscribing to the channel. Each week, we share long, slow journeys into the gentler corners of the past, perfect for resting, thinking, or simply drifting into sleep. And if you'd like to join us again, you can explore our other histories waiting softly in the playlist. Always here, whenever the night feels long. Thank you for listening, and may your dreams tonight be as calm as a library at dawn, as soft as candle smoke fading into morning.